Started. Hello. Started. Started. Oh, hello. Okay.
Okay.
Started. Started.
It's a starting
Oh,
soon pala
hello.
isa po ah. Okay.
Started. Started.
It's a starting
Okay.
soon
Oh,
pala
hello.
isa po ah. Let's start? Okay.
Started. Started.
It's a
Okay.
starting soon
So,
pala
hello.
isa po ah.
Hello.
Let's start? Hello everyone,
Okay.
this is
Started.
podcast number 4.
Started.
I'm Ruben.
Okay.
So,
Hello.
guy
Hello.
for
Start.
Capriccioso
Hello, everyone.
Studios.
This is
Podcast
and
number 4.
welcome to
I'm
our
Ruben,
newest
guy.
podcast.
All right. So we actually have a very interesting guest today. He's not a voice actor, he's not a community manager, and he's not even a game dev. He is a writer. He is the very first writer to ever come on our podcast and give a quick talk. So we have a special treat for you. Joining us is none other than D.A. Chan, the awesome writer behind the immensely popular series Kindred Chronicles. His work has captivated readers worldwide and has even caught the attention of Variety. We'll be exploring his journey, inspirations, and essentially how he managed to thrive in such a brutal industry. So there we go. Give him a round of applause. So David, introduce yourself. So who is David Chan? What's he doing right now?
Hello, hello. Good evening, everybody. Yeah, it's first of all, I just want to say thanks. Thanks to everybody in Capriccioso for having me here. You guys are really doing a crazy good job, and it's really a delight and an honor to be one of your guests for this podcast. Uh, Answer your question. Okay, so what am I doing? I'm doing a lot of different things. So aside from writing and being a novelist, I'm also doing a little bit of almost everything, but the main thing that I'm doing right now is we have what you call an intellectual property management and consultation firm called Hip Studios. It's based in Singapore, and we are currently partnered up with several studios and organizations and companies to help turn their IPs into different things, different forms or mediums, so animation, video games, film, things like that. But yeah, I do have other businesses, so I'm not a full-time writer, but I do enjoy writing a lot and storytelling a lot. Yeah.
That's great, man. That's great. That's awesome. Just out of curiosity, when exactly did you start writing, and how did you manage to find that craft? Because, in terms of being a writer, it's definitely such a niche here, and even to succumb to such success that you've had, even to the point that you've been featured in Variety. How do you manage to do that?
It wasn't an easy road. It's still not. It's actually quite challenging, but it's very doable now. I would even say it's more doable now compared to 10 years ago. I started writing in 2004, maybe. I've always loved reading. I've always loved fantasy stories. It's been a passion of mine ever since. But writing was not something I thought I'd be doing. And in 2004, I joined this website. I started writing a few short stories there. And the first story I wrote, which I will not name because I want to bury that and to not have that see the light of day ever again. That was a very weird, uh, cringe story, but people seem to kind of think it was cute. And then I wrote a few other stories, which people said they liked a lot, and that encouraged me to start writing more stuff. Um, I wrote something. I wrote the Kindred Chronicles in 2015, actually, so that was quite some time ago. But it was so difficult at the time because in 2015, when it was first published, um, it was a strange looking. I chose a strange looking cover, and I did not know what else to do. I had no idea about marketing, about publishing, about the entire industry. So I said, I don't know where to find the support, so I stopped. I just completely dropped everything. And then just a few years ago, I started talking to a very good friend, Lawrence Panganiban, who's actually now my partner in Hip Studios. Um,
Whoa, Lawrence, next
yeah,
Hello,
podcast
Lawrence.
guest. Next. um,
yeah. I
We know
strongly
your
suggest you get
interest.
the guy. Yeah, yeah, you should get the guy as a guest. That would be really amazing. But yeah, he gave me a call and he pulled me back into the entertainment industry and he told me that the support's there, the infrastructure is there at least in the ecosystem side. And he said, it's a great time to be in the industry. I took a look and sure enough, it was true. I got back in and yeah, I just took things one step at a time.
that's amazing, and like as you mentioned, even from your first story, you've managed to have that. I don't know, like that intuition to essentially capture the reader's attention. You said you wouldn't mention the story itself, but maybe you could give like a little quick breakdown of what the plot was. What exactly caused it to have the reader's attention that it did, that it inspired you to continue writing?
Okay. Again, so the first book I actually published is this one, The Kindred Chronicles, right? But I actually do have 5 books out. So this is the first, and I think the reason why people tend to gravitate towards these kinds of stories is because uh, I essentially just got the common interests of people, which is, there's a little bit of fantasy, a little bit of adventure, a little bit of romance. You put all that together, and that's usually a recipe for something good, something people like. So, so yeah, if I won't mention any spoilers, but the Kindred Chronicles Between Two Worlds is book one of 5 books, and it's an urban fantasy adventure about an idealistic young man who discovers that the girl of his dreams belongs to the ruling house of an ancient superhuman race, and he reluctantly joins her and her duty-bound fiancé in a secret brewing war between mankind and kindred kind. So if you want to take popular shows or stories, just mix a little bit of Twilight, a little bit of I Am Number Four, a little bit of City of Bones with the world building of Harry Potter. So I just put them all together.
That's cool, man. But like for you, is it? I'm not a writer myself, and I don't know if any of the other Capriccioso members are, or maybe they do it for in their free time. But we certainly don't do that as a job or as something that we'd wanna like confidently do. But is it true that every writer has their own voice? Can you distinctively tell if someone has a writing style? It's kind of like how music, every musical artist has a music style, or even the way that people paint or draw. Is it the same as being a writer? And if so, who is D.A. Chan in that sense?
You're absolutely right. I agree 100%. There is a definite style, and you can definitely tell. Let me see. Have you ever heard of? Now this is, I'm gonna reveal my age, but if you listen to all the songs of the Backstreet Boys,
It's not. They're not that old. Come on.
No,
okay,
they're
fine. So yeah,
not.
they're not. Yes,
I
I'm
still know their
young. I'm
songs.
young. Okay, so I'm young. Yeah, but the Backstreet Boys, guys, if you listen to the Backstreet Boys, they have a beat. There's a certain beat that goes over and over again. I think you'll find this in YouTube. You can just YouTube Backstreet Boys a similar beat, and it'll show up. Uh, and and it's the same when it comes to writing. There are people with a certain style of writing, and you'll see it right away, or you'll spot it. So Tolkien is definitely someone you'll know right away. Tolkien, his one sentence is a paragraph long, and it's a complex compound sentence with hyphens and semicolons and everything. And then you've got Stephanie Meyer, who writes in a very I would say her style of writing, her voice is very emotional, and it's very in depth. And say what you will about Twilight, but as a writer, she's a good writer. Uh, for me, I think I ended up sort of mixing together a little bit of I Am Number Four and a little bit of Bram Stoker because I jump from one character to the next. So Bram Stoker is one of my favorite authors. He wrote Dracula.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. You circling back to Token, I gotta
Mhm.
ask, like, have you read the have you read I don't know how to pronounce it, Silmarillion? I don't know how to pronounce it. The very long Token book where
Yeah.
it's like just full of stories in the Lord of the Rings, set in Lord of the Rings.
Yes,
Have you read
actually.
that? Then
Yep.
how you
Silmarillion.
you finished it?
Uh yeah, but it was a long time ago. I think I read it more to study. So yeah, you know how musicians try to copy other musicians and study their style, or painters, right? I'm sure video game developers also. You take a look at the artwork of other video games. So writers do that as well. And Tolkien was one of my, well, still is one of my heroes in when it comes to writing. So I had to study his style, how he wrote, but I couldn't copy. It's just too difficult.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, someone asked. This guy is actually a very good writer. He's a friend of mine, and he found out that I was, gonna. He found out that we were gonna have you on, and they asked me to ask you this question. Has there been any point that your writing felt stagnant, like you got the writer's block, and how did you get over that?
Ooh. Okay, yes, there was, but I have not had writer's block since 2004, 2005.
How do
There's a
you
trick.
avoid that?
So there's a technique, there's actually a
Wow.
secret to it. So here it is. At least for me, this has worked for me. I don't know about others. Okay, so there's two tricks. The first trick to it is to plan what you're gonna write. Um, some people are pantsers, meaning they're very spontaneous. They sit down and they just write like crazy. Others tend to plan and plot a lot. So, for example, the pantser is someone like Stephen King. He can sit down and he can write and he can just finish everything real quickly. So, Stephen King, he's a spontaneous writer. You've got J.K. Rowling and George Martin. And those guys are super, super planners, super plotters. They've got charts and they've got outlines and Excel sheets everywhere, right? My suggestion is to plan what you're gonna write. At least you know what scene you're gonna write. You know what exactly where you're headed as a writer. So that's the first step. The second step I do before I even write is I close my eyes and I imagine the scene happening. So that when you start writing, you're just describing what you're seeing. You're describing things as they're happening. So that's the second step. But here's the third step, and this is, I think, the secret to avoiding writer's block. Um, I'm going to go a little bit technical. So, in the brain, we've got the left brain and the right brain. And the right brain is all about creative chaos, and the left brain is all about logic. So, before you even write, before you even sit down, you got to decide like, am I gonna write something, or am I going to edit and polish? Because many times writer's block is caused when you don't know if you're gonna write something new or you're gonna polish something you've already written. And so the left brain and the right brain end up fighting each other, and so writer's block happens. So the trick is, if you're gonna write something new, you should stop caring that it's gonna suck. In fact, you have to just accept it's gonna suck, right? And then just write it, even if it sucks, because you're gonna polish it and edit it anyway. So yeah, those are my 3 steps, and I haven't had writer's block ever since.
That's cool. That's cool. How about for the game devs? Like, have you guys ever encountered something similar to what
I
David just described?
uh anecdotal, but I used to write before. I wrote like a 50,000 word fiction about some guy being trapped in a dream. It's kind of fantasy thing, and I wrote it in a span of 2 weeks, or probably more than 2 weeks. I forgot, but did not stop. But then after that, full stop. I didn't look at it ever again. It's a big weakness, and yeah,
Hmm.
that's kind of my experience
My
though.
end, mhm. Yeah, on my end, yeah, the only thing I write was like the recent one. We have our devlog. Then like I wrote the script for it, and then like uh, I got a writer's block, so I just I just played Elden Ring, and then like uh, when I quit the game because I got mad, so I proceeded to write the
Yeah,
script again.
games are for relaxing. Then you play Elden Ring.
So, circling back to Kindred Chronicles, how did it start? Everything, it's I mean, again, it's a highly acclaimed book. So, yeah, how'd you get the idea? How did it start? What was the essentially the origins of it? I think this is crucial information when up and coming writers listen to this. How did it start? What was your mindset when writing it? Why did you write it?
Okay. Wait, before I answer the question, I just want to say, Dan, for the 50,000 words, if you still have the manuscript, dude, I'd love to take a look. And, I'd be happy to sign all the NDAs you want. I just would love to take a look at that. Maybe there's something there, and
No,
we can do
it,
something about it.
it's something that shouldn't see the light of day. I
Is it
read it.
fan fiction?
No, it's not fan
Fan.
fiction. Just fiction. And it's more
Is
like
it what
my
bad?
the main thing there is that the the point of views keep changing for no apparent reason. And yeah, that was my main, I don't know, main ache why I stopped back then. That's way, way, way back then.
Well,
But
there might be something there, even changing of point of views. It might be a unique style.
um, but writing was fun. It was fun when I was doing it. It was incredibly stressful when I started editing. Like the pouring out my ideas was fun part, but um turning them into something that other people can understand was the not fun part for me. How do you, yeah, how do you deal with that? Like you would want other people to understand your point of view. How do you plan it out? Is it experience thing or is it something you really just plan?
Wow. Actually, that's a good question, and it connects to the other question that Ruben asked earlier about how things start. I think the most important thing is you gotta know, or at least writers know. We have to know at the very least 3 things. For me, at least, this is what works for me. I need to know, number one, my theme. What's my theme? What's the core message here? Uh, what's the core issue that you want to get out from your mind or from your heart? And then the second thing that I think writers should really know is how do you think your story is gonna start and how is it gonna end? And a lot of times people say, I don't know how things are going to end. Yeah, you don't know how things are really, really going to end, but you got to have an idea of a kind of ending at least. You know, is it going to be good ending? Is it going to be bad ending? Is it going to be a cliffhanger? Is it going to be an ending that will leave a taste in the mouth of people, of the readers? You know, so you got to know your beginning and your ending. You got to know your theme, and lastly, you got to know if this is something that you feel very strongly about. Because when you start the project, you're going to have to sit there and you're going to have to write so many days. And so you're going to invest time, effort, energy, resources, and you're going to drink a lot of coffee. So you have to make sure this is something you feel strongly about. I think that's how things really have to begin. In terms of writing it in a way that people understand, the only thing I would have to say is I'd have to quote Stephen King. You got to read a lot, because the more you read, the more you'll know how to write something out, how to flesh things out.
Mhm.
So yeah, just read a lot, and yeah, it'll happen.
Read a lot and it will happen. Because
Yeah,
it also kind of connects with one of the things that I feel right after I read a book or while I'm reading a book. I tend, while I'm reading a book, I tend to think in the tone of the writer of that book. Does that make sense? Like my thoughts, instead of the usual way I think to myself, they my thoughts morph into uh, something similar to what the writer would say in their book. Is that something that happens
exactly.
to you too?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And that is the sign of a good writer. If you as a writer are able to sway the thoughts and emotions of the reader, oh, that's it. That's really it. Um, yeah, that I think the more you read, the more you see, and also the more you read, the more you get to see how writers play with words. And when the words, there are just sometimes, or some writers, the way they choose the words, right? It just makes so much sense, or there's a rhythm, or there's a song to it, almost like a song to it.
Mhm.
And these little techniques, you won't really learn them until you start reading and you keep reading, and it's just, you learn as you go. And I would say all writing is practice. Even your published stuff, that's all practice, because we're all growing anyway. So don't be afraid if you write something now and then it doesn't sound as good as something you're going to write 10 years down the road, because we're all growing anyway.
Amazing. Amazing. The growth part is the really difficult part. I think it also connects with like our growth in the game development part. I'm a programmer, so I don't exactly write anymore. But it's also kind of similar. There's a lot that we can apply there too. This there's also this question from Ashley. Actually, pwede rin ka story actually, pero she sent it in chat. She said, "My story has a beginning and ending, but I struggle with the in betweens. Like, how does one point reach to the next point?" I think it's a connected question.
Yes, we have the same struggle. Okay, so okay, good question, Ashley. Okay, this is actually one of my favorite things to do when you're stuck. So ask questions, interrogate yourself. So here are a few questions I would ask. This is going to be spontaneous. For example, you have a beginning, you have an end. You've got a character named John Smith, and John Smith met this girl, and her name is I don't know, Pokey. Okay, this is all spontaneous lang. Ask certain questions. Where did they meet? So if you say, okay, carnival. Okay, why is John there? John's there because he's got a family vacation. Okay, how many brothers does he have? How many sisters? What's his backstory? Does he love his family or not? Is there a trauma there in the past? Do they have a secret that he's keeping? So keep asking questions about the characters, mainly more about the characters, because the more questions you ask about the characters, you'll end up having so much information. And then your problem is not going to be how to connect them. Your problem is going to be, um, what parts should I remove because I have too much information now. I have too much content. So ask questions about each character, and then ask questions about how they relate to each other. ask questions about the situations that they're in, how they respond to it, why they would be or they would not be in certain situations. So just interrogate yourself. So imagine you're an author already, like a published author already, and then pretend you're the interviewer and then interview yourself and then write it all down.
Okay, I see, I see. There's something similar in programming. It's called rubber ducking. When we encounter a
Mm-hmm.
problem that's very difficult to solve, we, I don't know, we look at a metaphorical rubber duck and explain to them the entire problem, what we tried, etc., etc. So the act of explaining to a rubber duck, it helps a lot in fleshing out what's wrong or how we can solve that problem. I think that's kind of similar to interviewing yourself as the character. But I I think I'm digressing. Ruben.
No, no, it's okay. It's perfect. Yeah, yeah. Rubber ducking. I like it.
That's an interesting term. Rubber ducking. That's cool. Wait, actually, I speaking of, I actually read something quite interesting about Kindred Chronicles animated series. So how's that coming along? How's that coming along, David?
All right. Okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's you read correctly. We were featured just recently by Variety magazine. So essentially, right now we are partnered with Core Workforce. This is the same team that brought you Castlevania Netflix, or it's the same team that worked on several parts of Castlevania Netflix, and they're the ones.
Damn,
Yeah, yeah. I'm excited. I'm excited. So we're on the verge of finishing a very short trailer for the Kindred Chronicles animated series, and we're going to be bringing it to the different studios, and then from there, yeah, the goal is to turn it into an animated series, a full fledged, like the whole thing. Yeah.
that's so cool. But then you mentioned that Kindred Chronicles is gonna be a 5 book series. So
Yes.
will it correlate? Will it be like a Game of Thrones situation where as the series is finishing, like you haven't finished yet? Like how will that look like? How are you gonna balance that? So I'm guessing you're probably gonna be a producer in the animated series, and you're probably gonna be helming writing as well. So how would you balance that?
Uh, Crazy amount of time management and a whole lot of coffee. But okay, on a more serious note, yes, yes, it's going to be 5 books. Book two is actually semi out or already kinda out now, and uh, the book launch here in Cebu is going to be in July 20, and the book launch for book two in Manila is in September for the MIBF, the Manila International Book Fair. But as to the Game of Thrones thing, yes and no. So I am a producer right now. I'm with Hip Studios. I'm one of the producers with Hip Studios, and I will also be taking the helm in terms of writing, or at least co-writing the animated side of things. But yeah, the goal is, because book two is already semi out this year. The goal is to push one book a year. So book three is going to be next year, book four the following year, and the finale book five the year after that, while making sure the animated series is also moving forward. And yeah, it's just time management and having a good team, collaborating with amazing people, and the guys we're working with are so amazing. I am
Mhm.
so grateful to them and so grateful for them. So yeah, I'm just very humbled that we're working together.
That's fantastic, and I good luck, man. Like good luck. That's all I can say. It's awesome, and we hope to see the trailer soon. Is there like an expected date or?
What did that feel? Like there's a lot of pressure there. I can feel,
Yeah, man. Like
Yeah.
and I'm not even involved in this. But wow, that's big.
No, it's
yeah,
big. You're right. I agree, and it's exciting. The We're hoping to get the trailer ready for the Manila International Book Fair, and we're hoping to show the very short trailer there in Manila, and then we're gonna show more of it in the days after September. and then from there it's only going to progress more from there. Yeah.
So will the series be a direct adaptation of your book, or will it be essentially it'll help supplement the world building of the book? So it's something that the readers can watch simultaneously without it being a repeat of the book.
Oh, it's going to be a an adaptation of the book.
Oh, that's cool.
A lot of it's so funny because a lot of people really enjoy the world building side, and a lot of people are saying, "Hey, make an anime of something that's not part of the story but in the same universe." So apparently, they enjoy the universe now, and for some weird, funny reason, a lot of people like my side characters more than the main character, which I find really interesting and ironic at the same time. But I do appreciate the fan base. Uh, they like the, I guess they like the love stories and the concepts. But yeah, it's gonna be a direct adaptation, and we're hoping that it just adds to the flavor of the book, and it gives people different perspectives that add joy when they read, when they listen, or when they watch.
Well, that is what's kind of popular right now. You know, everyone wants their franchise or IP to become a cinematic universe. So, how do you feel about that as a writer? Do you think it's limiting? So, example, when you watch a movie, do you think a move? Have you ever thought when you watch a superhero movie? Have you ever thought, hey, like this superhero movie could be better if it wasn't connected to anything, or if it didn't have to follow the rules of that set universe? Do you think as a writer, do you think cinematic universes limit the potential of the story, and in what way?
My goodness. Okay, so this is gonna get me in trouble a little bit, but okay. Uh, I agree with you 100% with the question. Well, I agree with the question that it does. There is a limit, but it also depends on the writers and how they treat the source material. So I'll give you an example. I am number four. I love the books. The books are insanely good. So for those who've watched the movie and have never read the books, they will probably rate the movie at maybe at an 8, maybe 8.5. But then once they read the book, oh my goodness, the movie will drop to a 5 or a 6. So what happened or what happens is basically when there is really good source material and it's not used, or the movie writers stray too far, they end up shooting themselves in the foot. Uh, Let me explain a little bit. So in I Am Number Four, if you guys haven't seen the film, let me explain a little bit. So I Am Number Four stars a guy named Four. His name is literally Number Four, and he's an alien, and he comes to Earth, right? And he's got these powers. Now in the books, his powers in the book, he begins in a way that's very pathetic. He doesn't have much powers. His hands simply glow. And his powers don't get strong until maybe book 3, book 4, because his ability is to sort of copy or amplify the powers of his friends. But in the movie, of course, they needed to give him coolness, like the glow up. They needed to give him the glow up right away. So in the movie, they gave him really cool powers in the first film. Now, that the writers, they shot themselves in the foot, because then how are you going to write book 2 when the source material is so far from the film? Right? So that's the problem. If you stray too far from the source material, you won't know what to do next. And I think that's what happened with Game of Thrones. The very ending was so bad that if you notice, everyone was crazy about Game of Thrones, and then after the last season, dead silence. Nobody talked about Game of Thrones at all overnight.
Yeah, that's true. They kind of killed the universe overnight after the finale, man.
Yeah, yeah. So that's what happens, because they did not stay faithful to the source material.
That's true. That's true. But in terms of book adaptations in general, how do you feel about it? Because books are more detailed. They give a new perspective in terms of understanding the character. How
Yes.
does a book adaptation not limit itself in that sense that it's a how are you gonna compress like a 5,000 page book into like a 2 hour or a 1.5 hour movie without
Uh,
being too limiting?
Well, you make a Lord of the Rings director's cut with 2 extra hours.
Oh.
Dude, and then the end credits is like an R. The credits are like an R.
Yeah. Or you make a Dune saga, right? But yeah, I know what you mean, dude. It's so difficult. It's for me it's an impossible task, but I also so I love movies, right? So I love both. I think they add flavor to one another and they if done right, they complement each other. So movies give maybe a summarized semi-summarized version of the book while the book gives you a more deep dive intense feel of the story. But yeah, I think if done right, they complement each other, and the limit for me is just flavoring. It's like a salt bay, it just adds flavor to the book and vice versa.
But then
Another
even a 4 hour. Sorry. Go.
yeah, another thing is that with the books, people are imagining the entire scenarios on their own, so they subconsciously have an expectation on what the movie is supposed to look like. Then the movie is completely different, right? That's I think it's
Yes.
different, very difficult, and it's amazing that people can get that done.
Yeah, that is pretty amazing. But even in that sense, no matter how talented you are, whether you're a Peter Jackson who has a 4 to 5 hour director's cut, he still couldn't find a way to fit in Tom Bombadil in Lord of the Rings. So
Yeah. Well, it's it's so difficult, especially when you're talking about Tolkien,
yeah,
because
the
he
lore's crazy, man.
yeah, it's insane, and he crams so much in his pages. So like, I don't know. I think it's impossible for at least Tolkien. Yeah.
But you know, how about video games? Do you play video games, David, or no?
I grew up with video games.
Okay,
What you have to
so
ask me is the games I did not play.
well, how do you feel about player choice versus a linear story in terms of as a
Ooh.
writer?
Good
Does that
question.
yeah, it's another like it limits the player again, or it limits the viewer from enjoying the story more if it's if whether
Yeah.
you choose player choice versus linear story. How do you feel about that
For me, it
in a
all
writer's
boils.
perspective?
Well, if you're the writer, it's hell. Because you have to write so many different paths and endings and twists. So if you're the writer, it's going to be hell. You gotta get paid so much. But in terms of being a player, I gotta say, it all boils down to the writing, the quality of the writing. Because if you, like for example, Silent Hill, you've got like a gazillion endings, right, for Silent Hill, and some of the endings are really weird. Like there's an alien ship, or so it all depends on the writing. If even some people who say, "Oh, I really love the linear style of playing video games," once they experience a really well written player choice kind of storyline, they would say, "Oh, this is good too." And vice versa. So I think it all boils down to the quality of the writing. So much is in the writing or hangs on the writing. So yeah.
Mm.
That's
Well, that that is a pretty good point, especially now that video games, especially single player ones, are really leaning towards storytelling. Some video games go by the philosophy of storytelling first, then gameplay second. I think
Mm.
Naughty Dog is a guilty developer of that, just based on my experience. But um, just storytelling in media in general. How do you feel about it now, especially with the new shows coming out all the time? Whether that be the MCU or even the Witcher series or the Fallout series that's been trending
Mhm.
like crazy. Have you been consuming any modern media as of the moment?
Modern
Instead of
media.
besides like besides just reading, like yeah, have you been consuming any streaming services or any of the newest movies? How do you
Yeah. Oh,
feel
I've
about the
been
writing there?
I've been watching a lot. In terms of the writing, it really depends. I really do not appreciate the MCU. And yeah, I did say it. I said that intentionally. No, but
Yeah.
really, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's really the MCU now, and I'll give you an example of really terrible writing. Okay, so with Marvel, when you watch the older Marvel movies, all the way from the first Iron Man, all the way to Endgame, it just stops in Endgame, right? The writing is so good. The writing was brilliant. The stakes were high. They gave characters so many challenges. They had to grow. The character development was spot on. The dialogue was so good. The banter. Just look at the banter between Captain America and Iron Man. Like, what are you without your armor? Oh,
Mm.
billionaire playboy philanthropist, right? So, like, you've got these epic dialogues, and the writers were good. Then you look at the MCU now. The yeah the heroines, they don't even struggle. There's no struggle. They don't earn their powers or their abilities. So I'll give you an example. Look at Captain Marvel. Look at how easy it was for her. She belly slices through the giant spaceships. If you watch her very first film, the solo Captain Marvel film, she flies through the spaceship and destroys it without a sweat.
Mhm.
And then she looks at Ronan, right? And she just pumps her fists. And then Ronan says, okay, we got to get out of here. There's no final fight scene. So they made a joke out of it. There's no struggle. The reason why people cannot relate with Captain Marvel is because she's poorly written. It's not because of the actress. It's not because of Brie Larson. It's the writing. The
Yeah.
writers did not give her enough challenges to grow as a character. So yeah, it's bad writing. Look at She-Hulk
Oh
versus
yeah.
Bruce Banner Hulk. Like, Bruce Banner had to go through so many things. He was stuck in another planet. He was separated from people. He was from the Avengers. When he comes back, he loses brutally against Thanos. He goes through so much crap. And then you look at She-Hulk. She it looks like she mastered her abilities as the Hulk overnight.
Overnight.
No
Yeah,
issues,
that's
no
She's even
problems.
better
that's
than
literally what happened.
mm.
Yeah,
He-
Isn't this like the
yeah,
like part of the over I don't know how to word it. It's technically not the woke agenda, but it's more on the trying to appease the people who get offended, right?
yeah, yeah. And when you do that, when you write to appease the you lose your story. You'll end up losing your story, and you're gonna lose your integrity as a writer. You're gonna lose the very message that you're passionate about, and then you're just gonna be, you're going to write stuff for people who don't truly care
Yeah.
that you're writing those things. So
They
yeah,
that's
only
it doesn't work.
yeah, they only care if you don't write it, because then they'll complain.
yeah, that's
Yeah,
true. And I
exactly.
think um in a marketing sense, looking at the MCU now, I think they're really just banking on the fact that they're a well-known IP now, so they don't really have to try. So they
Mhm.
just basically throw whatever, no matter how obscure the character is, they just basically throw out whatever idea
Madam Web.
they can. Yeah, and see what sticks or see what's the next. Basically, they're trying to replicate what they did with Guardians of the Galaxy, because Guardians of the Galaxy is like a they were unknowns before James Gunn, and then they're kind of trying to do that, but with
Yeah.
other characters. It can be done well. Like, have you seen the one shot Werewolf by Night?
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, that was done pretty well. But then it's more of like, okay, what's next? Like, okay, that's a pretty good 1 hour short. But then what's next? And then after they suddenly transition into Miss Marvel, and then it gets overwhelming. And at this point, when you're a long-time viewer, it feels like there's no point anymore, because when you look at the phases when you look at the first 4 phases, you're really following a set cast. Even though there's like
Yes.
a crap ton of movies, you're following the big four. It was just about them. It's about Hulk, Iron Man, Thor, Captain America. Like, you were following their story. They had like yeah, they had like a looming presence around them all across the four phases. But we
Mhm.
don't have that presence to hold on to in the next phases after that. I think that's what they were trying to do with T'Challa, but then the actor died, which is
Mhm.
sad.
Yeah. Yeah.
So everything just went out the window after that.
Well, yeah, but I also think it's really so circling back to the whole issue of the writing and the quality of the writing. If you look at even Black Panther, see T'Challa, he went through so much, like his father and the trauma, and then the dilemma of chasing after. It just you see the gravitas of the character even with Guardians of the Galaxy, you brought up a very very good point. With the Guardians of the Galaxy, they were lesser known, but if you look at Star Lord, even if he was supposedly a comedic character, they gave him so much depth. They showed us his past, what happened to him, how his mother was sick, and all of that, and then he eventually meets his father. So there is still that gravity and that weight to the character. Now you don't have weight. All you have are pithy jokes and that's why people are falling off and they're rewriting characters. So for example, Nick Fury in what's it called, the Marvels. Nick Fury was turned into a joke who just loves cats and kittens, and the whole spaceship is, or the space station was already burning, and there's an emergency, and he's like, oh, cute kitties, right? So like they're they're they are now giving us an impression of characters that we have grown to love, that these were not the actual characters that we have grown to love. And so they're essentially just disrespecting the audiences that they have given their time, their money, and their resources for what? For an agenda. And that's something people don't appreciate. And it's the same thing when it comes to writing. You gotta stay faithful to your story, to your message. you know yeah, keep your integrity as a writer.
Damn,
Somebody
damn.
said they assassinated the character of Nick Fury.
Oh yeah.
They did.
Yeah.
Kind of did.
I think speaking, you call it the MCU, which I can't blame you because that's what everyone's calling it nowadays because of the way that people are written. Essentially, they're all Mary Sue's.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
um, they're all Mary Sue's. Shout out Ray Skywalker. But race swapping and gender swapping in
Hmm.
movies and even books, how can it be done well, and when should they do it?
No, good
Because
question.
now
Yeah.
Snow White is not
Why?
white. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not.
I don't want to get canceled.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean, dude.
Don't
Okay,
worry.
I'll do the speaking so you don't get canceled.
Okay, we're used to it.
Yeah, no, but you're absolutely right, man. I agree. I agree. Snow White is no longer white, or she's not white as snow anymore. Maybe she's white as snow when the snow is kind of melting, and like people
Yeah.
are now walking around the ground. So, yeah, that kind of snow. But
But yeah, how do you do that appropriately? There's always gonna be those people who would always try to make the effort to, for the sake of inclusivity, they'd turn a white character black, or they'd turn a black character Asian, or whatever. They even did that with Power Rangers. The
yeah,
Black Ranger in the Power Rangers 2017 movie is an Asian dude instead of a black dude, and I think
yeah.
They did that to
I
Avatar too.
yeah. So like, yeah, how do you go about that in a not so tacky way? Make it seamless, that it's not
Uh-huh.
distracting. Because there are
Okay.
times that it is really distracting because it's kind of it's such an in your face thing from time to time.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
yeah, how do you go about that as a writer? How would you go about that? Like if you're
Okay.
forced to race swap, let's say Netflix is like, okay, we'll take a deal from you if you we'll take a deal and we'll shoot one season of your book. Just make sure one of these people are, I don't know, a different race or a different gender or whatever. How would you go about that in the writing? Like, would you is that going against writers' integrity, or is that something else?
Okay, that's gonna be case to case. One, I would have to ask the question: is Is the race or the gender essential to the story? That's the first question. Okay. Secondly, is it essential to the character itself? And it's not this. I'm not asking these questions as a hierarchy of this first. All of these have to be yes. If even one is a no, then I won't even do it. So, is the character's gender or race crucial to the character? Number two, is it crucial to the story? Number three, um, does it is it obvious that it's just to do the whole inclusivity thing? So I'll give you an example. Let's pretend. Let's pretend that the great white shark. I'm sorry, no, not great. The blue shark, or the hammerhead shark, is now an endangered species. So they're gonna remake Jaws, but instead of a great white shark, it's a hammerhead shark, but it's still Jaws. Reboot the and a hammerhead shark. Are you gonna watch it?
I mean, that would be a pretty cool visual to have a hammerhead destroy a boat, man.
But does it
Like,
work?
I don't think.
Can they destroy a boat?
Oh yeah, that's true.
Right? Or how about King Kong as a red butt baboon?
Okay. Okay. How about this? Do you think Batman should like? There were rumors before. Um, do you think can Batman be black?
No, no.
Right? I mean, like, dude, we got like people like Winston Duke. He's an awesome actor. I love him in Black Panther. In Black Panther 2, I think he was the best part. But
Okay, okay.
he's fighting to be Batman right now.
No.
Oh no.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I think that was one of the appeals of Batman, like that he struggled with privilege and white privilege in a lesser sense. So if you kind of take that away from the character, you kind of lose a lot of storytelling opportunities there, I think.
Yeah. Put it this way. The way I see it, all this stuff about gender swapping, race swapping, whatever swapping, that if you just do the exact opposite and it won't work, then don't do it at all. So for example, I'm gonna reboot Charlie's Angels, but there's gonna be three guys as Charlie's Angels, male angels, and Charlie is a girl. If everybody goes nuts about that because I swapped it or did the opposite, then just don't do the first one. Just don't. Because you already know it's the identity. So instead of gender swapping, race swapping, I would counter with this. Make a new character. You don't have to make or look at this, for example. What's his name? Superboy. Superboy, in the comics, they made him gay, they made him trans, they made him everything, and the comic book sales dropped. And then when they when DC said something along the lines of, "Oops, sorry, that was like a spoof," the real Superboy is Superboy Prime, and everybody bought the comics again. The same thing happened with Miles Morales as Spider-Man. They made him this gay black guy, like the perfect, right? Like he's gay, he's black. Next thing you know, they're gonna make him an orphan, Hispanic, whatever.
Everything.
Yeah, and the sales
Everything,
dropped.
everything except
Cool.
white.
He's the
Yeah,
avatar but
exactly.
for inclusivity.
Yeah, and look, the sales dropped, right? And so what did they do? They had to change it back to the original Miles Morales that they originally planned. They made him straight. He was still black, but he was straight. And then look at Into the Spider-Verse, Into the Spider Multiverse. It was a success.
Yeah,
So
That's
yeah,
amazing.
I think Miles Morales is a perfect. It's a super great example of inclusivity done right.
yeah, yeah. You-
How about Nick Fury? Originally he's a Caucasian character. Like he I guess he was done right? Nick Fury.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so that's a good example. In fact, in the old movies, you know who played him originally? David
Yes,
Hasselhoff.
David Hasselhoff, the Hoffman,
Hoffman
Baywatch,
Baywatch.
Baywatch.
Oh man, when I first saw it, I was actually like, you have the theme of Baywatch playing in your head. The what's it? Are you ready?
See, I know what Baywatch is. I'm not that young.
Yeah, yeah. It's not that. But yeah, so Nick Fury was done right simply because number one, his race was not really crucial to the character, and number two, um, Nick Fury. Nick Fury is a character that represents more of the authority, the anti government stuff. So he doesn't have to be white. His role in the comic book, he's very anti, government, or not anti government. I That's a mistake. He's more of the wild card for the government. Like, I'm gonna do things my way, kind of deal. So his race didn't matter so much. Yeah.
I see.
Hmm.
Connected with that, Ruben, CJ has a question. If you check on Facebook,
Oh, so do writers ever consciously ensure that their storylines and characters are substantial enough to avoid being cancelled? If so, isn't that process quite draining?
easy. Okay.
That's a wow. That's a very good question. I would have to say there is sort of like a balance. So as a writer, you got to understand first that you have to choose your niche and your genre. So if you're writing and you already know, oh, this is hyper niche, my market is super hyper niche, and I'm okay with that, then if you're okay with it, then write it. Write it the way you want. And you don't have to worry about getting canceled because you already accepted that, this is hyper niche anyway. So you just have to know your audience and know your market ahead of time so you won't have any kind of weird experiences going, oh, I can't believe I was canceled when like, right? You just know ahead of time. And you can do that with a simple Google search and, just looking at social media and finding out what's happening in the world.
Mhm.
You'll already know. But for the most part, I would say write what you want to write, um, and market it to your market
Oh, I see.
instead of trying to write what you think is, gonna succeed. Just write what you want to write.
Mhm. Speaking of controversial books,
Mhm.
are some books meant to be controversial just for the sake of being controversial, or um, is that a good idea to do books like that?
Uh,
I don't know. What's the
it
question?
actually depends. I think it would depend on your purpose. If your purpose is really just to make it controversial, then go ahead, go for it, right? But
Right, the wrongest
if your goal
things.
is to, yeah, I think it's really up to you and your purpose and your intentions. There's no right or wrong strategy depending on your purpose. So if your purpose is to be controversial, then yeah, it will be.
What about controversial in a way to send a message, a certain
You,
point of
yeah.
view that needs to be seen by other people?
Well, that's definitely something you can do, and people have done that. In fact, many books have been written because of controversial issues, which have, I guess because now we don't know the issues of the past. There were, I'm sure, so many books. I can't think of one from the top of my head right now, but there have been many books in the past that were controversial then, and they are classics today. And there are also books that point to certain issues of the world. So yeah, you could.
Speaking of
Speaking of,
your your
it's
newest
a good
book,
segue.
good segue, nice one, Dane. But we were meaning to ask you. That's some nice
Yeah.
cover art there. Give us a breakdown of your newest project, quote unquote project or IP.
Okay, this is
So
the
the
most
Jackal
recent
King.
one. Yeah.
Yeah.
First of all, props to the people who made the cover of the book, Capriccioso. Artists are the ones who made it.
Keep up.
Yeah, it was. Let me just say for a moment, I am not an artist, right? So I was just so amazed because when I drew my thick man sketch of what I was hoping to produce, and I sent it to you guys and your team, you guys just blew it all out of the water. It was so good. And so, yeah, that's such a great cover right there. But yeah, okay, so it's controversial. Indeed, it is, and I intended it to be. This is actually a retelling of the folk tale The Emperor's New Clothes. And you know how the story of the Emperor's New Clothes is the Emperor wanted everybody to believe that he could actually see the clothes, and everybody said that only those who are wise can see the clothes, and if you're a fool, you won't see the clothes. Um, I rewrote it, so it's a retelling of that folktale to address so many ideologies today in the present, and it is meant to be controversial. So this is a story meant for. It's a very short book, very very short, and it's meant for parents to read to their kids. But of course, if you're a parent, read it first for yourself, and if you think it's okay, then read it to your kids so you can use it to explain what's happening in the world, especially when it comes to child, what's it called, gender affirming care for children, and they end up doing all these surgeries to kids, surgeries that are irreversible, that do permanent damage to children for the sake of an ideology. So that's why I wrote the book.
Yeah, this is like a birds and the bees talk between the parents and the kids. It's a conversation between them.
Yes, kind of birds and the bees, but more. Why are the stingers of the bees being cut off, mom? And why are the wings of the birds getting, sliced off? Yeah.
Exactly. But
Sorry,
yes,
wait.
like with the state of the world right now,
Sorry,
it's definitely
I
something
just
that
got
should be taught to the kid by a parent. As it's a topic that should
yeah.
be, yeah,
Yep.
all
Um,
about.
what actually it might I don't know if it's too personal. You don't have to expound, but what actually triggered you or inspired you to do this or write this story?
Okay. Oh, that's an interesting question. Well, the thing is, I've always been pro the safety of kids. Uh, when I got into church, for example, I volunteered in kids church or kids ministry. So kids is always, or the safety of kids has always been a big deal for me. And what's happening now is a lot of these kids are being exposed to ideologies that they're not supposed to be exposed to. So you've got at least in the US, right? You've got like the drag queen hour, the drag story reading. What's it called? Story reading in the libraries by drag queens, things like that. And you've got really young kids who are asking to be mutilated, essentially having these surgeries that mutilate them, removing certain perfectly healthy body parts just because they don't feel comfortable in their skin. And uh, they have these done before puberty. That's why it's called puberty blockers many times, because they try to block puberty. So these are things that are done to them before they even hit puberty. And
Mm,
many times, if you look at the psychological journals and the medical journals, these children and their discomfort with their own skin, these are cured by puberty.
mm,
So you're supposed to let them go through puberty, and puberty fixes a lot of these issues. But when you block puberty and you prevent puberty, what happens is they never get the cure, and then you're damaging them in a way that's irreparable. And so yeah, there are documentaries now that's out, So I just thought I'd add to the conversation with the book.
not
Well,
just that.
so
There's also the brain not being completely formed yet at those years. You don't even let kids drink alcohol or drive. Why do people let them do life-changing surgery? So
Yeah.
I don't know.
mm, that's true, and I think it's kind of. I guess the word is brave, though. It's kind of brave of you to touch on that subject because stuff like that, especially here in the Philippines, is not really touched upon. It's more of like a. It's either it's either the parents are super strict or the parents are like, "Eh, bahala lang na siya," you know. And there's no like
Yeah.
right balance.
Mhm.
But anyways, for I don't know for people who are listening, I don't want this to be misinterpreted, but uh,
Time to reply, chat. Hey, chat.
I don't want this to be misinterpreted, but I think what we mean is that it's okay to feel these things just at a right time, I guess, like at a specific age where you guys get to decide for yourself in a more mature level. Because what they used alcohol as a comparison, that's true. You don't let your kids drink alcohol when they're 5, or even when they're 10 or even 13. You don't let them have, intercourse up until they're, what, 18. So how is this any different? Because this is a permanent life
Yeah.
changing thing that shouldn't be rushed. And I feel like um going against that can be misinterpreted as homophobic or anti,
Oh
like,
yeah.
just anti-trans or whatever, but that's not really the
Yeah.
case. It's more of like, hey, like, it's okay to be like this, but just think about it for a sec, because this is a huge life-changing decision that we wouldn't want you to make when you're like 5 or 7 or 8, just because you watched one drag show or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. Or let me just add or put it this way. It's not about anti or for anything. It's essentially just saying if you've got healthy body parts, why not keep the healthy body parts? And if you decide to remove them when you're of a legal age, but be very careful. So, for example, what if I said I identify as a handicapped war veteran and I want doctors to cut off my hand? Would people say, "Oh, how brave of you"? Yes, yeah, go ahead. Have them chop off your
They
left hand, and yeah, right. Like, or I would say I identify as a what's it called? Something pelagic, like or someone with no legs, and I will have a surgeon chop off my legs. Would people call me brave? So you see, it's as simple as that. Why is why is gender um a big being made the issue when the issue is not about the gender? It's about what reality is and what you want it to be, and if that is something that's healthy for you. It's really common sense if you think about it, but people don't want to use common sense. They want to be politically correct.
This is a tough talk. Like even
Damn,
if we're adults talking about it, it's pretty tough.
damn, we're
How
game
much?
devs, man. Come
Yeah,
on.
like how much more is
We're
it
game
between a
devs.
parent and their kid, right? Then that's where
Yeah,
this
But
comes in.
yeah, again, like, I agree with the sentiment that it's okay to feel these things. You could just be
yeah,
confused. It could be an actual feeling, or
yeah.
it could be a hormonal thing. Like, it's okay. It's just give it some time before you make a life changing decision like this.
Yes, yes, exactly.
And speaking of, I think this might circle back to the writing and the media thing.
Yeah,
I think there's a lot of media right now that encourages children to experiment. And what is it for? Is it for the clicks? Because that's what
Yes.
trends.
Yeah.
These people are essentially making content just to get aroused out of somebody, and then
Kids.
those things can be accessed by kids as well. And when the
yeah.
kids watch it, they misconstrued it as something that's for them. you
Hmm.
That's
know
the whole Instagram thing. Baiting aspirational people into whatever product they're trying to sell. And now this
Hmm.
includes kids.
Yeah.
Oops,
Can I
that's
give
bad.
you a controversial take on it, which might
I'm gonna prepare
okay,
my
it's not
soundboard.
gonna get yeah, okay, but I think the whole world now has become one gigantic high school. That's really it, and it's all social pressure and bullying. So I'll give you an example. When you were in high school, there were bullies, right? Maybe grade school, there were bullies, and the bullies would bully the victims, and the bystanders, because they're so afraid to get bullied, they will join in bullying the victim, and so they become bullies too, just so they don't become victims themselves,
Oh, yeah.
right? And I think that's what the world has become. People are so afraid to be called politically incorrect, bigot, labeled this or that, intolerant, blah blah blah, so they join in so that they don't get victimized. But deep down, these people, they all know that they're just following along out of fear.
Mhm.
That's all that it is. It's really just fear mongering.
Um, to add to that, I think people who would listen to this podcast would there would be a lot of people that would disregard our opinion or what we're saying because we're straight males or whatever. But I don't know if we're white. Like I get that there's like technically here in the Philippines,
Yeah,
like we're
we're
not white
Filipinos.
straight white males, but there's that namang yun na stereotype na oh like
Yeah.
kanang macho whatever toxic masculinity, but like that doesn't mean that our opinions are not valid, diba? Because
Yeah.
how is it any different when it's the other side of the spectrum? I get that we're all straight here, I think, but and
Yeah.
yeah, but
Yeah.
kanang that doesn't mean that we don't have that doesn't mean that we don't have our opinions on things, diba?
Yeah. Well,
And
let me just say, I have a lot of gay friends. I have a lot of gay friends. There are people in my life who are gay or LGBT who are very dear to me. And I would, if anybody would come and bully them, I would stand right there and say, no one touches my gay friends. So it's not even about the LGBT stuff, whatever. It's allowing people the ability to have their own opinions and to express themselves. Because the moment you cancel people based on their opinion, you become a fascist. And that's, when people stop talking, that's when war begins, right? As long as there's conversation, then there's hope. Once people stop talking, people are going to war.
mm,
Yeah.
damn, what do you think, game devs?
This is way above my pay grade.
Damn, what do you think, game devs?
Yeah, I guess
but
it all boils down into just not being an asshole to your friends or to
Yeah.
people in general. But that's like a super generalized thing. There's a lot of nuances, and that's why there's still conflicts and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's understandable. And again, like it's very admirable that kind of like you really took a stand by writing this book, and it's extra admirable that you hired us to do the art. but yeah, it is very admirable that you took a stand by writing your piece in this very sensitive topic. But let's say a reader reads it and gets triggered and
Mhm.
it just spreads and goes viral. How would you handle that?
Okay. If people read it, I'd be very grateful. And even if they review bomb it, they'll say 1-star reviews, hardcore triggering. I was so triggered. I don't mind. That's my point. That's their right to have an opinion. And if they hate it and they express it, that's cool. Because that's exactly the point of it, right? They have the right to their own opinion, their own freedom of expression. But I think based on the writing, they're gonna see that I did not write it out of spite. I wrote it out of an actual genuine concern because I believe. Here's what I believe: if anybody said, I identify as somebody who has been to war, and so I want to take my right leg removed. I want to remove my right leg from my body. Every single person, out of love and concern for me, will tell me not to do it.
Mhm.
Everyone's gonna say, David, you've never been to war. You've never experienced war. You've never killed someone. You've never been shot at. Uh, the facts are just not, the facts are not there to support your claim that you're a war veteran. So what you're having is a delusion. So don't cut off your foot, your perfectly healthy foot. And it's out of love and concern that if anybody would tell me, hey, I want to do this, I want to remove a perfectly healthy part of my body because of something, I would say the same thing. The facts don't support your feelings. The facts are the opposite of what you feel. So don't remove a perfectly healthy part of your body because you're going to use that. You're going to need that. And it's a permanent thing what you're trying to do. So why is it that if it's about cutting off a foot, it's delusion and it's unhealthy, but if it's cutting off some other part, it's
A
suddenly
third
gender
foot.
affirming care? Why does it change when the principles are exactly the same? See, because again, political correctness, fear of being victimized, fear of being called a bigot. That's all that it is. So, yeah, I would stand for this because I care, because I love people. That's why I would stand for it.
That's fair. That's fair. Um, but yeah, that's actually a fair point because again, yeah, there's a lot of, especially when you go in public like this, there's a lot of
Yeah,
landmines that you have to avoid, just
yeah,
for the sake of cancellation or whatever. But
CMCU.
uh,
yeah.
but kanang, how do you avoid, because of so many things happening in the world? How do
Mhm.
you avoid when writing? Going back to writing, how
Yeah.
do you avoid getting too political when trying to acquire real life inspirations in your fictional writing?
Ooh. Okay. All right. I'll say this much. In my writing, I'm actually not. This is the only book that has something like that. It's the Jackal King and the Threads of Wisdom. So I wrote several. I have other books. So I've got Dreams. It's a short. It's a one book with two short stories, and it's just fantasy, romance, and supernatural suspense. There's nothing political about it. You've got Kindred Chronicles, and it's just a hardcore fantasy world building. It's like Harry Potter meets Twilight meets I Am Number Four and City of Bones. So Harry Potter has four houses. I've got four kindred capitals and four kindred races. So it's just fantasy. There's no politics in it. I actually wrote another one, The Orphan Maker. It's a visceral, bloody, gory, supernatural suspense thriller. It's about vampires, and because I love Bram Stoker, and I love Stephanie Meyer as a writer, but I did not like that she made vampires sparkle under the sun.
Yeah.
So I wrote The Orphan Maker to bring back the vampire mythos that they're monsters, that they don't care, that they're really gonna kill and harm people, and there's no politics
Oh,
there. So I enjoy telling stories because the stories are fun, the stories are entertaining, and the messages take a backseat to the story. And I would give this advice: if you have a message that you feel strongly about, make sure that you're not writing a sermon masquerading as a story. Write the story first and let
Damn,
your message just go through the story.
that's good advice, man. That's we're gonna clip that. I'm gonna clip
we're gonna
that
clip
and
that.
post that next week.
Even without context,
But
that's pretty good.
yeah.
Yeah.
So speaking of kanang, how do you go about making sure, do you hit stereotypes when writing stories? So the antagonist has to be, I don't know, like tall and handsome, or like the love interest has to be beautiful or whatever. Or what exactly is your mindset when creating your cast of characters in the story? And do you correlate it with the people you meet in real life? Example, when you're writing a lead character, do you have a person in mind that you try to mirror off of for this, just for inspiration to make the character more real?
Okay, that's a good question. It depends. For some characters, I do. For others, I don't. Um, okay, while I'm writing, I do get Google images of celebrities, or not even celebrities. Just I just Google image faces of certain people and I screenshot them, and that's what I use as character pegs. So just so that I'm consistent in my writing, like it won't happen that in chapter one he's got blue eyes, and in chapter seven he's got brown eyes, and chapter nine he's got dark black eyes. Just for consistency's sake. But when I'm creating the character, it really depends on what I want to happen in the story. So sometimes you need to have a villain that's kind of like in Die Hard, Professor Snape in Die Hard, that that kind of character, kind of ruthless but really smart, very intellectual. Or sometimes you're gonna have a character that's more like Sauron. Oh no, sorry, not Sauron, Saruman in Lord of the
Mm.
Rings. So um, sort of villainous, sort of menacing. You're not quite sure where he stands until the very end. And sometimes you just gotta have a character, a villain that's charming, all the way charming through and through, and he's got a point. Like Thanos. Thanos to me was a very charming villain, and people was, "Whoa, Thanos charming." Not physically, but like the traits. He's Thanos. For me is at least the way Marvel wrote him, not in the comics, but in the movie. He was to me the perfect villain because in his own story he was the hero. He knew what he wanted. He had a code. He was a warrior, so he had a warrior's code. He honored that code even when Doctor Strange said, "Okay, I'll give you the stone. You don't kill Stark. You spare Iron Man." And he kept his word because he's a warrior at heart. So you got to write characters in certain ways that fit your story, not necessarily fit a stereotype, but your story first.
Smart. That's that's really smart. That's a smart way of looking at it because um but how about when a lot of the villains now, especially in modern media, fall into the trap of they have to be sympathetic. How do you write a stereotypical villain but done well?
Oh, okay. So this is a trick that I learned. There are three things that every character will have. Uh, it's gonna be. Wait, let me remember. I hope I'm saying this correctly. One is gonna be his genes. The other is his resources, and the other is his values. You can have one or two, but never three. So look at Hannibal Lecter. In terms of smarts, he's super ultra intelligent. In terms of and he's charismatic too. So he's got one, the smarts. The genes, not so much. The values, yikes, very scary. So he's got one out of three. You gotta give them all a kind of a flaw. So you give them one or two, but never three and never zero.
Mm.
Cinderella is beautiful. She's got the genes, but no resources, but good values. So she's got two positives, one negative. Right? So good genes, good values, no resources. If you give the reason why Prince Charming never works is because he has all three. He's charming, that's his name. He's got resources, and he's got great genes because he's handsome. That's why Prince Charming is just Prince Charming. He's a flat character. So
Yeah.
you gotta have, yeah, yeah. So yeah, make sure he's got one or two, never three, never zero, and you'll do well if you just follow that rule.
So basically, makes him more human.
I guess, sort of, yes. Now, to the question, if we want to be more specific, how do you make sure that the characters don't fall into the trap? In addition to that rule, just always ask yourself: is this character the hero in his or her own story? Because in their minds, they're their own hero. The side characters are their own hero. The villain is his own hero in his own story, in his own mind. So write them that way. Don't write them as side characters. The side characters are still the heroes of their own story. Yeah.
But why is it that a lot of especially in pop culture sense, a lot of the side characters get more traction than the actual main characters? I can name countless side characters who become pop culture icons on their own, whilst
Mhm.
the main characters are kind of not left to dust, but they're kind of in the back burner.
Yeah.
But you kind of run into the trap of, okay, like this character is fun. It's like a fun snack. Like you don't want to have it all the time. After a heavy, like you just want to have like a mint after a heavy meal, but you wouldn't want a mint all
Yeah.
the time, diba?
Yeah, that's true. Okay, okay. Give me one. Give me one, real quick. Anyone random.
I guess like in terms of pop culture, like we were talking about Lord of the Rings, like in terms of pop culture impact, I'd like to think that is Gollum like a main. I don't know if he's a main character. I think
Yeah,
he's kind of a side character, but like, um, yeah, I guess he would be one. Ironically, yeah, I think
yeah.
he's a pretty good example.
Yeah, that's true. Good point. That's very true. I think okay, if you look at mainstream media, we're not used to one shots anymore. We're used to series. We're used to sagas. We're used to 9 seasons or 5 seasons of something. And normally, as writers, what you normally do, especially when you're writing a saga of 5 books, I can or Harry Potter, for example, is how many books, right? You can't give Harry his character development done in book one because you know you're gonna write five, 6, 7, 8 more books. So you gotta make sure Harry's character development in book one is very, very slow, and in book two as well, very slow, and in book three, that's when it begins to rise, right? So you gotta make sure his character development arc spans the entire saga or series. But you're not doing the same thing for the side characters. You can give the side characters all the character development you want because they're not the star anyway. But the side effect of that is when the people read your books, they're going to look at Harry and go, here's such a bland character. He doesn't have character development yet. And so they're going to naturally gravitate to side characters. And the side effect or consequence of that, especially for writers, is the more they write, the more they focus on delaying the character development for the main character and not caring about the side characters. And because they don't care about the side characters as much, they give them more character development. And so the fans end up gravitating towards those that have character development right away. And so to avoid falling into that trap, you have to give a kind of character development for the main character and then sort of pull him back or give him a kind of regression and a valid reason for regression in the following books, in the book
Mm.
two, book three, book four, and all of that. And that's harder. It's easier said than done. And I know because I've fallen into that trap. A lot of people who've read Kindred Chronicles really, really like a side character I wrote, Rayham Threadbare, a sword dancer or a blade dancer. They prefer him and his love story a whole lot more than the main character, and they're like, "Oh, I can't believe that you wrote him this way and that way," and you know, and I'm like, "Well, I'm just glad you enjoyed the book. Doesn't matter which character you preferred. I enjoyed the fact that you enjoyed." So yeah, but yeah, I did fall into that trap, and I'm fixing it in book two and three, four, and onwards.
Mm. Well, again, um, I think this is time. We're about to end around 9:30, but so we just wanna
Uh huh.
um ask the viewers if they have any more questions. If they have any
Actually,
more
that was
questions that we can
that
ask
was the
us.
question. I lost it. It's buried somewhere. You
Here, have you heard of writers that I think this is the one, but Ashes, feel free to interrupt if this is not the right one. Have you heard of writers that acted out their story, the characters and their voices, actions, sound effects, instead of writing them? Because I act out my story instead of writing. I've wrote only important bits like characters or how the world functions.
Act out, meaning they go to the theater and like a play, like or I'm not sure what this means, but or is it the writing process that they act out
Yeah,
in
I
the?
think it's like the writing process, and
Uh-huh.
then they try to stray away from traditionally writing it, and basically, yeah, like I think it's a writing process. What do you think of
Okay,
that writing process?
I'd say if it works for you, go for it. I mean, you know, there's so many different ways to get your thoughts and your story out. But of course, if you're planning to publish it as a book, then you got to write it out. Uh, but in terms of getting into it and the emotions, so okay, so funny story. I was no spoilers, but I was writing a very painful scene in Kindred Chronicles, and I was writing it in Jollibee Park Mall, and I was sobbing. I was ugly crying in Jollibee in Park Mall writing that scene. And there was a group of nurse students, like med students, and they were all staring at me. And when you look and then they look at you and they kind of look away, pretending they never saw you cry. So I was like, oh man, this is so embarrassing. So I left Jollibee. I transferred to Bo's Coffee Club, still in Park Mall, and I started writing the next chapter, which is like a revenge chapter to the previous scene. So I'm stomping on my keyboard with a really angry face. Lo and behold, I look to the side, and it's the same group of students sitting on the opposite table, staring at me again. I'm like, dude, this is so embarrassing. But I tell that story because it's true. I mean, sometimes we get so invested, emotionally invested, and we feel it, we sob, we cry, we scream, we get emotional, and that's just part of the process. So go for it, experience it. If it makes you write or finish your story in a way that's more real and more authentic, as long as you don't harm yourself and you don't harm others, of course, then I would say, yeah, try it, see what works for you, and I hope it works. Yeah.
That's a really great insight. Um, it is true that I think I can really imagine that when you guys are writing, you get knee deep into the character and essentially get lost into the emotions of things. I mean, who wouldn't get emotional towards their work, diba? Especially
Yeah.
something as personal as writing.
True.
But does anyone else have any other questions? I think that was it. Although I've been getting a lot of PMs and uh people have been telling me that this is like a really good podcast.
They have been.
So
I'm sending the screenshots.
yeah, so but there's one person Naingon. I don't want to pronounce their names because I might
Yeah.
I
Just
might
gonna murder them.
butcher it.
I
Yeah.
got cancelled. Yeah.
But they said, "Hello, it's me again. This podcast helps me a lot, especially because I'm an aspiring published author and currently writing my debut novel named From Zamboanga with Love. I hope I
Mm.
can get some insights from this podcast." And it's safe to say that they certainly did. Again, Sir David Day Chan, thank you for the time. We really, really appreciate it. And you're free to plug whatever you have going on, whether that be your book, your other ventures. It's all good. We'll make sure to link it next time we post about you. Feel free to
Uh-huh.
plug it now so we can clip it and repost it whenever.
All right. Well, first I want to say thank you guys for having me here. It was such a joy. It was so much fun. What incredible experience. As to where you'll find my books, my books are currently available in Fully Booked, in BGC, in Ayala, Cebu. If you want to search them online, my books are available in 8lettersbooks.com. I'm also on Amazon. I'm also on Goodreads. I'm also on Facebook. If you want to write and you need some help, please feel free to reach out. I am very active on social media, specifically Facebook. Yeah, so yeah, click on the page and stuff, and send me a message, and we can add you to a community of writers that help each other out. And we're happy to help you, increase or grow your skills. And yeah, shoot us a message. We're very happy to help.
Oh,
That's
someone
awesome
said
again.
episode 2 of tonight's podcast, please.
But
Let's go.
yeah, like awesome. Thank you so much for the time. You're a really busy person, and this podcast has been a long time coming. We asked you like a couple of weeks ago, pa,
Yeah.
but we've only found time to do it now, which is great. It's an awesome experience, and hope to have you back again soon if we can find the time. But what's
That
next
was
for
fun.
Capriccioso Studios?
Da-da-da. Some announcement on our side.
Da-da-dun. So, congratulations to our new graduates. They actually had their puzzle game called Sprout featured in the PGDX page, and they'll be featured in Indie Game Stars and PGDX. That's friggin' awesome. You guys are awesome. I remember when we were playing this. It was like fucking almost 1 a.m. in the evening,
Yeah.
and
When
it
is
was a lot
PGDX
of
today?
fun.
Oh yeah, July 26th to 28th. Be there.
Be there, and
Cause
then
we'll
next
also
night,
be there.
woohoo! We'll be
Hey,
there in
nakagaling ka,
PGDX.
Gonna be fun.
So
I hope so.
we'll be there. It'll be fun, right, Dane?
Gonna have enough socialization for the next 5 years after that. I just
But
stop
yeah, well,
talking.
yeah, it'll be crazy, man. There's gonna be a lot of people. It's gonna be in Manila, guys. So if ever you see like a green rocket ship logo anywhere, that's probably us. We'll be walking around, networking, saying hi to everyone, probably creating content as well. So yeah, that's pretty much it. And again, thank you so much, David. It's been awesome. I think there's a we've had a lot of content from this, and we've also had a lot of insights from you. You're a very insightful guy, and we really appreciate the time.
Thank you.
Thank you as well, guys.
All right. It's like yeah. Woo! We're done.
What an ending. Hey, stream is done, and that's a wrap. Wait, people can still hear us? Oh, I don't think they